Yeah, good morning. So happy to see everyone here. My name is Carly. I'm part of the International League of People Struggles. We are a global anti-imperialist democratic people's alliance. We're a broad united front of over 400 organizations all around the world that come together to fight for our communities, to fight against the system of imperialism and all of its impacts. Today, we are bringing folks together in Seattle to start a new campaign over the next several months that we're calling the People's Platform. This platform is an opportunity to really come together, to bring out our local struggles, whether that's in our workplace, whether that's for our families, whether that's against the police and the sweeps, whether that's against detention centers, whether that is in defense of our youth and our schools. We want to really see across our movement and reject imperialist false solutions that are being pushed by the Democratic Party, by the Republican Party, really by the ruling class politicians in this election cycle, and put out what really matters, which is fighting for our people, knowing that it's really going to be our movements, it's going to be the mass struggles, that the solutions that our communities already know and are fighting for that we can rely on. But we're not going to be able to rely on any outcome of the presidential election in November to save to save us from the crisis that we're all experiencing in different ways. So today, welcome. We'd love to have folks introduce yourselves in the chat, where you're coming from, who you're holding, who you're bringing into this space. And yeah, we'll have a couple of hours here together just to really level off and share our hopes for this campaign and invite people to plug in. So again, welcome and thank you. I really want to also ground today in some of the news that many of us got over the past 24 hours of the murdering of Aishnur in the West Bank, in Beita, Palestine, yesterday morning. I know that she was a really beloved community member here. I know that her family is in immense grief, and she's one of so many, almost 200,000 Palestinian or martyrs that have died in the Palestinian cause. So we really want to lift up her name and know that folks are holding plans for vigil today at the protest at 1 in Westlake, and also are opening up a planning meeting tonight at 5:30 to plan a vigil at UW. So yeah, want to lift up Aishnur's name, along with so many that have become the victims of the violence of this system. And yeah, maybe just hold a few moments of silence for her and all that we've lost in the course of these struggles. Thank you so much. And free Palestine. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. For today's gathering, we'll share a brief political situation, or just a sharing about what is going on in this election, what ideas are being put out in the mass media by the politicians, but also what's at stake. And then we really want to roll out our People's Platform. What are some of the main issues that we're fighting for? And we'll have the opportunity to hear from a lot of members of our community. We'll hear from a lot of campaigns and struggles across many different issues. And that's really the essence of this platform. It is how we come together, how we unite, and how we strengthen ourselves so that we can defend each other, defend our rights, and defend our right to continue to struggle for a better livelihood, and future. So we'll hear from so many people. I'm really looking forward to that. And then we'll share a little bit more about how people can plug in. What are we thinking about for this campaign? What's the timeline for upcoming actions? And even have some time at the end for folks to plug in. What we're really driving toward is we want to make sure that no matter the outcome of this election, a few days after we get the results, we want to make sure that people have a space to be in the streets and to fight for what they really want. Not fight for a limited option, not fight for the lesser of two evils, but really project a broad, united front of what we know will solve our community's issues. And we're trying to bring that all together with this tool of a people's platform. So yeah, welcome again, everyone. And I'll pass it over to Nikhil to get us started.
Thank you, Carly, for welcoming us in, and then thank you to everyone just for being here, for making time amidst the grief and the anger to continue to struggle, to continue to organize. Yeah, really excited to initiate this campaign. You could go to the next slide. I'm going to provide some political situation. I think the reality is that we know the political situation through our organizing, through our being integrated in community. We know the realities of mass incarceration and houselessness and poverty and genocide. But we're wanting to make sure that we're also grasping what the imperialists are doing, what the Republicans and Democrats are posturing, how they're using mass media to project themselves and their platforms so that we can respond and uplift the genuine people's solution. In gearing up for this campaign, it's been somewhat of a funny experience. I all of a sudden, in ways that I haven't been since my very liberal era in high school and early college, I am paying attention to mass media, watching CNN Dana Bash on a Friday night interview Kamala Harris, for different purposes now, to expose it, to uplift our campaigns. And it's really upsetting, it's really agitating to hear Kamala Harris posture herself as the border crackdown candidate and to double down on Biden's policy of an unlimited flow of weapons to Israel. And it shows the places we have to grow in our ability to analyze the situation and counter-prop what's going on. So hopefully today this can be useful, a tool for us to organize with. Maybe we'll go to the next slide. And I'll just read just some situation on the crisis and the need for our platform. So faced with climate catastrophe, mass impoverishment, and untenable working conditions, devastating wars of aggression, and countless other crises caused by the imperialist system, the Democrats and Republicans inherently cannot offer any true solutions to the people's issues in their bid for the US presidency. They represent the elite and will govern accordingly, regardless of how pro-people their own platforms may seem. History has shown that at best, progressive promises of top US leaders have never led to the fundamental change that's needed. Next slide. At worst, they have intended to placate the masses and prevent the people from fighting to dismantle the system itself in order to achieve the fundamental change that is needed. Real and lasting change is only possible through fully uprooting the system. But history has shown that any gains that have been achieved, even if temporary, were achieved principally due to the collective struggle of the masses, and the masses deserve more. Yeah, I mean, we know this is true. We know that grassroots organizing, our campaigns, our mass struggles are decisive in creating change. So the point of this campaign really is to grow that and to draw out the need for that through this election, through this cycle, to come out through this process stronger than we were before, to have a clearer grasp on the realities of the system and what the people deserve. With that, I'm gonna go into how the Democrats are positioning themselves, their platform. We don't have a lot of time, but you can see their platform online. They're talking about, they're phrase mongering around like the middle class and like tackling costs and like uh, and preventing gun violence and whatnot. There's progressive language all throughout this. Go to the next slide. And then as you can see, the harsh reality of border militarization, American leadership. We know this is massive military budgets and continued wars of aggression. And if folks are seeing things or pointing things out, please put it in the chat. What you think, what you're seeing, how this contrasts to the realities that you're seeing. And so we see that this is progressive, and it's claiming to be for the people. But we know that under Biden, there has been a massive attack on the working class and poor through union busting, through increased cost of living, and through genocide and expanded military budgets. And we saw this in very stark terms at the Democratic National Convention just this past was it August, July? Yeah, August. And what we also saw was like people in mass, tens of thousands of people outside of the DNC, outside of the United Center in Chicago, protesting and exposing the realities and rallying for a free Palestine and for genuine people's needs. So we've seen the people's response as well, which we'll talk about more. To the next slide. The Republicans, I'm going to move through this. Oh, more. Right. Just a quick clip.
As command.
Yeah, you can just play it briefly, actually.
As Commander-in-Chief, I will ensure America always has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world. And I will fulfill our sacred obligation to care for our troops and their families, and I will always honor and never disparage their service and their sacrifice.
When folks can respond in the chat with how they're feeling, how they're reacting to this, very clear that the Democrats are the party of war and militarization. And the Republicans are no different. If you go to the next slide, it's basically the Democrat platform, but in caps lock. I mean, literally, I copy pasted it in, and it was in all caps on the website. But it's really like, we're not going to read it through it because it's really like horrific stuff. It's outright fascism, attacks on LGBTQIA plus, working class, migrants, immigration, an outright call for white nationalism, and really scary stuff. And I think this is familiar. We've seen this the far right push of the Republican Party, captured under Trump's candidacy for the last 8 years. Can move to the next slide. Folks can, you're seeing things, identifying things, police, border militarization. And you see interesting things, where it's like, basically like, spending more on like defense budget and militarization against the border and whatnot. And there's specific things we want to pull out and identify and counterprop throughout this campaign. But yeah, for the sake of time, we can move forward. Yeah, it keeps going. It's a lot of points. And we saw at the RNC, Trump said, under our leadership, the US will be respected again. No nation will question our power. No enemy will doubt our might. Our borders will be totally secure. Our economy will soar. We will return to law and order in our streets, patriotism into our schools, and importantly, we will restore peace, stability, and harmony throughout the world. There is not peace under an economic system that oppresses and exploits millions of people around the world. We know this is not the case, and we'll learn more about that. I think the thing that I'm pulling out is how similar this language is to Kamala Harris's, how truly united the Republicans, Democrats are under war and militarization. but also the specific points between them where we can exploit the differences and split and use it to strengthen our movement to show that as they fight and butt heads, we don't have to choose between a lesser of two evils. We know what the people deserve, what the masses deserve. So if we move to the next slide, I'm going to skim through these next few sections, but it's more of what is mentioned, the bipartisan support for $1 trillion defense budget, which doesn't even include all of the allocations in the Department of Energy and Labor and Education that are also fueling militarization. We've been seeing more and more how all aspects of the U.S. budget is anti-people and pro-militarization, sending millions and billions in foreign military financing to governments overseas, like in the Philippines, like in Korea, like in Israel, that are attacking the people and complying with U.S. Strategy of all-out war and aggression against their so-called enemies. The next slide. We're seeing also on the issues of abortion and bodily autonomy, how this is particularly agitating because when it comes to progressive issues, the Democrats and Republicans go about it in different ways. The Republicans all out fascism in as we see the really stark maps around the country of what the post Roe overturning reality looks like for pregnant people, continuing to pile on an ongoing health crisis, and how really this affects working class women and children. And then in the case of Democrats, how it's used to continue to fuel this imperialist system, like in the case of Washington State, or in the case of the Pentagon allowing for abortion for military service personnel. And in the case of Washington State, this also comes up with the recent bill passed through Washington State Legislature to allow for limited access for DACA for Dreamers to be able to apply for jobs with with police departments in order to address the staffing shortages in Washington police departments. So we see how progressive issues are funneled into attacks on the people and co-opted in order to continue this violent system. And we need to reject that. We need to expose it. So in the next slide. I think another really the key aspect that we want to also pull out is beneath the platforms, behind the platforms, what do the Republicans and Democrats represent, right? Who stands to gain from either party winning, and who is funding and fueling these elections? I think we know that corporations, monopoly capital, are backing both candidates. Different factions of it, right? You see expanded really the oil and gas industry leaning into Trump and also into Harris, as Kamala Harris retracted her previous statement banning fracking this past month, and now it's saying that on her platform fracking should continue and expand, but also the energy industry and Elon Musk and AIPAC, this lobbying group for Israel. We're seeing construction conglomerates and of course weapons corporations backing both candidates and spending millions and millions of dollars in order to push forward these candidates. We know from the everyday exploitation of working people, and then also of course the experience of migrants and people coming from overseas, from countries ravaged by corporations, ravaged by U.S. war and weapons, that the cause of this crisis, the driving force of this crisis is capitalism and the corporation plundering our land, plundering the earth, exploiting more and more people, and plunging the world into crisis. And it's our imperative to organize broadly and in mass to expose the true class character of the Republicans and the Democrats, to expose monopoly capital's role in fueling this crisis. So with that, I'll close out and send it to the next section of our launch event to hear what a genuine people's alternative would look like and why we need to rally around a people's platform and how each and every one of us are fighting for it in our organizing. So I'll hand it off to Daniel.
Thanks, Nikhil. Yeah, really appreciate that powerful framing and situationer of the political moment that we're in, the economic moment that we're in. There is so much happening, and it is very clear that the system is treacherous, right? We need to respond. The Democrats and Republicans are inherently not able to offer any solutions to the people's problems, as we heard. So in response to the elections, we want to link together people's fights and project them clearly. We want to bring more people in and build a mass movement, because we know that, one, all of these issues that people are experiencing, they're connected, right? It is the system of imperialism that we are trying to oppose and expose. And we also know that by linking together our struggles, we know that when we do struggle, when we organize our communities around their issues, when we confront our enemies, the ones creating the system, that is how we win the future that we deserve. So I'm going to share a little bit about the People's Platform, and then kick it over to some folks to explain how they are engaging in the work, how they are struggling along these very real issues. ILPS US, the International League of People Struggle, the country chapter here, has assembled a range of topics that can represent and project people's issues and struggles. We've had community meetings, gathered input online from around the country over the past several months, and we were able to synthesize a People's Platform that we'll be carrying up to the elections this November and beyond. The issues are on economy, civil and political rights, health, safety, housing, education, migration, environment, national liberation and people's sovereignty, and peace and justice. But these issues are just the starting place. Over the next several months, we'll be getting even more input from our communities because we want this platform to represent the real tangible campaigns and struggles people are waging on the ground. So that's what we're going to hear today. A range of community members will be sharing about their work and how it connects to these particular issues, because it's those fights, those struggles that are the People's Platform. They are the opposition and the response to these elections. So with that, we'll move into the different points. And the first one is on economy. It states that we call to address poverty, inequality, austerity, inflation, and labor rights violations by ending corporate control of the economy and orienting production toward people's needs and worker empowerment. So that's point one on the People's Platform. And I would love to hear from Dantaz, who is representing the UW Medical Center Food Service Workers United campaign, to share a little bit about their struggle and how it connects to the.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Frankie, and this is Dantaz, and we're sharing a little bit about our grassroots campaign in our workplace. Just in case folks don't know, I think Dantaz will walk us through like what our campaign is and then like what it means for us as workers to build genuine power in our community. So you wanna?
Yes. So, this is our campaign for Food Service Workers United. Is a grassroots campaign that is for our people, for our food and nutrition service at the University of Washington. And we are fighting for better working conditions because UW created a policy called Mission Forward that increased contract labor and keep us understaffed and underpaid and represses workers when we fight for what is owed to us and we want our rights to be respected.
Yeah, and so maybe Dantaz, can you talk about how UW, our employer, has tried to divide and repress workers?
So basically, a little bit about everything that's been going on since I've been at UW. Basically, they try to basically like shut food service workers out. We have what you call ambassadors and food service workers. So ambassadors are on the medical pay table, they kind of deal with patients, but we also, as food service workers, we also deal with patients plus the, general public and stuff like that. But basically, they try to cut us out from everything, make it as if, they tell us what we are worth, instead of like really seeing that, we wake up every single day and we come to work to tend to other people's families who are sick and, in need too, we leave our families every day. We don't have to for real, but we do because that's our job. We still have bills to be paid, but we're pretty much living paycheck to paycheck,
How does UW benefit from when workers are stripped of their rights? Because that's what they've been doing through this policy.
So pretty much, UW makes money off of all of us, but more than anything for, some of our workers who are not here on papers, UW gets a percentage off of that. Which is not okay. I don't know if everybody knows that, but if it is going on in any other job setting, know that, if you are not here on paper, your company is making money off of you. Like a good percentage to be exact. Most companies are different, but UW gets at least a good 15% off of each worker who is not here on papers.
And then one last thing, what when our employers and unions and even our governments fail us, what have we done in our campaign to build genuine power from workers?
And we try to tell people what their rights are so they can understand and really like let them know that, you could stand up for your rights. Don't be discouraged or don't allow somebody to tell you what you can and cannot do, because there are things that, jobs are not allowed to do. They still try to do it, but some people feel like, hey, well, the company, they've been doing it. They feel like it's right. It's not right. It's not right at all. I'm also in the bargaining right now, a lot, within the bargaining session, UW offered us 1%, 1% for compensation, 1% for COLA. It said it's not disrespectful, another, is what they like to call it, they tell me be careful with a big accusation that, that the chief negotiator made across the board, basically, and I quote, because I have emails, mocking ESL people, made fun of, but they don't even read the contract. Like, that's not funny, and nor is that respectful either. Like, that's beyond the UW policy, that's basically discriminating. And this is the director of labor relations, who is the chief negotiator for UW.
And then what would it look like for a government to truly serve workers, especially knowing that the US and the Washington government colludes with UW?
If they stop trying to make money off of us, that's pretty much what they do. They're making money off of the backs of us, every last single one of us. But if they would just stop and actually, understand they have some valuable workers who actually enjoy what they do.
Yeah.
And actually stop trying to put money where it don't belong. Stop moving money around from all these different programs, from the schoolings, from the military, all that. Like, just stop. Because that's where the problem is. And they scream broke. When they're not broke. The government ain't broke, or jobs ain't broke. They all got the money. But they want to savor it. And that's not okay.
Thanks, Taz. Thank you. Keep up to date on our fight. I think there's the social media links there, but laban.
Thank you both so much for sharing about your struggle at UW-MC. Yeah, you absolutely should not have to live paycheck to paycheck. UW has the money, US government has the money, and the 1% is not a cost of living adjustment, as folks are saying. It is a disgrace. So thank you for fighting, because that is the way to win better wages and better working conditions. and ultimately a better future. I'm going to pass it now to Cleo to share a little bit about the young emerging labor leaders. Cleo?
Hi, thank you, Fran and Dantes, so much for that. I think it really kind of encapsulated a lot of the issues that workers are facing. I'm a member of the Emerging Labor Leaders. I'm also a member of Unite Here Local 8. And I guess Young Emerging Labor Leaders is an organization of a bunch of trade unionists under 35 years old, from a lot of different unions, to be able to show up to and show solidarity for each other in our labor actions, which are happening a lot around Seattle. We're just on the picket lines at the hotel strike, which are also members of Unite Here Local 8, on Labor Day. They were on strike on Labor Day and the day before for better staffing and better wages. And I think what's cool in the city and also across the country is we are seeing a rise in grassroots labor organizing and activity. And I think it really creates a need for organizations like Young Emerging Labor Leaders to be able to know and show up for, and kind of provide community support to these actions and activities that are happening on the shop floor in many different industries where workers are going on strike, picketing to fight for better wages and working conditions for themselves. And we also know that worker power is built from the ground up, from the shop floor up, and it comes from our coworkers, not from elected union representatives necessarily. It comes from us, and we're the ones that have to build that. So that's kind of what we're doing in Young Emerging Labor Leaders. We're also part of MLK Labor Council, and it's been a cool way to make those connections with other people who are doing that same thing and just show up. We're also going to have some like educational events on kind of like how to be in MLK Labor Council, but also how to like build organizing power on the shop floor. Yeah, I'm also in Strike Solidarity Committee, which kind of was doing that same thing, but is more of a group chat. All right, I'll pass it back. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Leah. Really great to hear about more spaces being built to come together and understand that the issues that workers are experiencing isn't just about the one boss, right? It is about an attack on the entire working class, which is this system, right? And so important for young workers to come together too, and speak out and struggle together. With that, thank you both so much for sharing on this point on economy. I think it really shows the need to stand with workers, to organize among workers, to fight for a better system. With that, we're going to move to point 2 on civil and political rights. If you can go to the next slide, please. This one states, to organize and resist against discrimination, repression, state violence, and racist police terror. Assert people's collective rights and build a truly democratic system that serves and is led by the people rather than the 1%. So on civil and political rights, I'm gonna call on Jasper to share a little bit from Super at UW, the Students United for Palestinian Equality and Return. Jasper.
Hi, I'm here with Super. I really appreciated the grounding and moment of silence for our martyr fellow student, fellow organizer, Eshinor, at the beginning. We're here today on the 337th day of the escalated genocide in Palestine, and we're here as an organization fighting for freedom, justice, and equality for the Palestinian people who have been living under Zionist military occupation and colonialism since 1948. As a student organization in solidarity with the Palestinian resistance, Super has faced a lot of repression, from doxing of our members online to terror tagging of our organization to now university repression through these sham code of conduct processes. And alongside our efforts to push UW to materially and academically divest from Israel, and also to cut ties with the war profiteering company Boeing, Super has undertaken the demand to end repression of pro-Palestinian students, workers, and faculty at UW as well. And on the topic of people's collective rights, we really uplift the popular leadership of the Palestinian refugees, prisoners, and the working class in building systems truly led by the people through their resistance. So yeah, thanks for having us, and we're gonna keep fighting.
Thanks for sharing, Jasper. Really important struggle, and really appreciate all the work that you're doing to uplift the Palestinian resistance and build with the community here. For the next speaker, I want to call on Veronique to share on behalf of the All African People's Revolutionary Party.
Revolutionary greetings, everyone. My name is Veronique, and I'm a member of AAPRP Washington and the AAPRP Women's Revolutionary Union. AAPRP is a permanent, independent, revolutionary, socialist, Pan-African political party based in Africa, the just homeland of African people all over the world. Our party recognizes that African people share a common identity, history, and culture. We are only arbitrarily separated by our enemy forces: capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, racism, Zionism, and apartheid. Our organizing circle looks forward to being a part of this platform, specifically to uplift our demand of end to all US sanctions for Anti-Sanctions Month in October, which we will have various political education events on, in addition to our push for Africans saying no to military service. We will be going into local schools to combat military recruitment. Trade and financial sanctions have been put in place to cripple the advancement of over 20 countries in the global south. The stated aim of sanctions is to punish a government for actions counter to the principles and interests of the sanctioning country, typically in the name of protecting democracy, opposing human rights violations, and national security. These sanctions actually function as a means of suppressing decolonization and legitimate socialist experiments in support of racist settler regimes. In all cases, sanctions punish the people, impacting the poorest and most disadvantaged the most. We see these same repressive tactics being employed in areas of the imperial core with a large population of Africans. So this is why we call for an immediate end to the Industrial Police and Military Intelligence Complex, or IPIC, specifically in the form of cop cities and militarized police departments who exchange tactics with the IOF. AAPRP recognizes that we cannot vote out imperialism. Both Democrats and Republicans alike have caused Africa to be the most heavily sanctioned landmass in the world, and tighten the grip of repression at home. So we appreciate that this platform gives us an opportunity to unite with other national and international struggles against racist and political oppression forward ever.
Thank you, Veronique. Really important work that you all are doing, and really appreciate you being here today. A good reminder that sanctions are a violent tactic of war, really, right? And the call to stop cop cities everywhere and to end police violence continues to remain relevant and urgent. With that, we're going to move to the next point on health. It states, create healthy communities by ensuring access to healthy food, water, air, and to healthcare that is free, culturally sensitive, and accessible to all, regardless of age, gender, sexuality, race, disability, and migration status. We weren't able to get a speaker for today on the health point, but that will be one of our goals over the next period, is to be building with more organizations and those waging struggles around health specifically, to build up an even stronger people's platform and have their immediate campaigns represented. So for now, we're going to move on to safety, the next point. Safety, it states, create safe communities by ensuring people's needs are met, to address the roots of violence, end the war on working people carried out through the racist police, prison, and court system. I'm going to call on Rashida and Nicole to share as family members of youth at Green Hill to explain what atrocities their young people are facing and how they are fighting for their loved ones.
Good morning. I'm Rashida. Thank you for having me here today. I'm here, found out about this meeting, and just so far I'm just really energized to hear about the work that all of you are doing. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm currently working with a group that's called Kids Are Kids, and we're basically, just to put it quite simply, a group of family members, friends, and loved ones of residents of Green Hill Reform School, which we all know is Green Hill Prison, and also Echo Glen. We're working towards shining a light on the atrocities that are happening to our kids in those places that are supposed to be educational. They're supposed to be providing, counseling, therapy for the kids, but they're really not doing all of that. This is basically state-sanctioned child abuse. Some of the things that go on in those places, if I didn't have a front row seat for it, I wouldn't believe it myself. Our strategy so far has just been to shine a light on the horrific conditions, which include just abuse by the staff, by Green Hill staff, and they're locked in their rooms for 22 hours a day for a better part of the year. The last 2 years have been really horrific. They're denied access to clean running water. They don't have facilities that they use in their rooms. So, they're forced to make do. I don't want to be too graphic, but, having to urinate in a bottle and defecate in a bag and then sit there in your room with it until someone decides to come unlock your door is pretty inhumane. We've heard incidents of youth being assaulted by staff and then denied medical care. This is basically a prison, and we want the public to understand that what we're doing to these kids is a detriment to our community as a whole. We have this opportunity to take kids that have made a mistake and give them the resources that they need to turn their lives around. And instead, we're taking good kids who have made a mistake and really we're watching the system trying to turn them in to bad people, right? Through, just subjecting them to inhumane conditions. I don't know if a lot of you saw it in the news when the 43 youth were abruptly moved from Green Hill to DOC. That had a huge effect on everyone. It was very traumatic for even the ones that didn't get moved. And watching Department of Children, Youth, and Families just go unchecked and just run roughshod over these kids, no one's saying anything. I think we're moving from a space of trying to get the word out to really wanting to be disruptive and showing up at their meetings and speaking up during public comment because just getting the word out is proving to be not enough. When you have kids that are reporting, food insecurity inside a state-run facility, we're watching the youth lose weight because they don't have access to proper nutrition. they're subject to all manner of disrespect and abuse at the hands of the guards and the staff. And yeah, basically why I'm here today is I really think that we all know that there's a need for prison reform, and we can start. I mean, a good place to start would be at a school, right? We can at least make sure that this is not a prison. We could at least make sure that we're not just funneling kids from Green Hill to the Department of Corrections. We can stop that school to prison pipeline right there. Yeah, so thank you all for listening to me today. Hope I haven't been too rambly. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashida, for sharing. And I'm so sorry for everything that your family is going through. It's truly horrific conditions, but we stand with you in the fight. And yeah, please let us know how we can continue to support. If you want to share it in the chat, we'll also send out afterwards ways for people to get plugged in. And ultimately, this campaign, right, is the way to continue to grow support and link our movements together. So please keep us updated, and thank you again for sharing. With that, we're going to move to housing, the next point, which is of course very related, right? The prison system is one of the ways that this system tries to address the housing issue, right? But here we state on housing, ensure decent and affordable housing for all, and eliminate the real estate monopoly of the big banks. Fight against gentrification, displacement, and the criminalization of homelessness. And for this point, I want to call on Gracie to share from Stop the Sweeps.
Hi, thanks for having me here. I'm Gracie. I'm a volunteer and organizer with Stop the Sweeps. We are an anti-hierarchical abolitionist group who fights for and believes in housing first as a solution, and where solidarity, not charity, is our priority. Housing first being our priority. It's our only answer. We cannot ask more of people who are in need of services before they are given a safe place with a safe space to have their own personal locked door. Sweeps don't house people. They inhibit outreach. They're expensive. I believe the current reported number is about 24 million a year is the budget for King County on sweeping encampments in the city. But it's closer to, we think, around 36 million is spent every year. And sweeps kill people due to obvious reasons, whether it be weather, throwing away essentials, throwing away identification, throwing away people's needed medications. Sweeps are deadly. As an organization, we're on the ground supporting residents in whatever ways they need while our city illegally removes them from their homes. The grants past decision by the Supreme Court has only made these sweeps faster, without notice, and in turn more dangerous for our neighbors living outside. So yeah, we are just here every day on the ground, reaching out to whether it be reach workers, hope workers, who are telling residents every day, we just don't have housing, but you have to move on. It's coming to a space where obstruction sweeps are now a thing. So if the city has ever swept a city block, they have now deemed that they no longer have to post in advance, and they just get to move on in and remove people with minutes notice. And there's nowhere for anyone to go.
Thank you for sharing, Gracie. And thanks to Stop the Sweeps for all of your tireless work. I hope we can all get plugged in more to support and call on the city to stop the sweeps, because we know they're not a solution. They are violent, and it's on us to be able to build up the power to defend the folks that are forced to live on those streets, and also be able to build a system that provides housing for everyone. So thank you again, Gracie. With this next point, we're going to move to education. And it calls to eliminate student debt and build an education system that is free, multilingual, and oriented toward solving society's problems rather than the profit-driven needs of corporations and the war industry. For this one, I would love to call on Oliver to share on behalf of the Seattle Caucus of Rank and File Educators and Washington Ethnic Studies Now.
Hi, y'all. Thank you so much for hosting the space and all the people that came before and spoke about the campaigns that they're working on, the issues they're working on. I definitely want to reach out to you, Rashida, and talk to you more about Green Hill. I've been a part of some of those conversations, but definitely need to chat more. My name's Oliver Miska. I use he/they pronouns, white, European, American. I work with I'm a Seattle Public School teacher and work in the union at Seattle Education Association and as a rank and file member within SCORE, which is a caucus of us that ultimately work within the union to make sure we're upholding the values of working people in the intersections of racial and economic justice. So with SCORE and then with Washington Ethnic Studies Now, I've been working with them and organizing for a number of years. Working on two really exciting campaigns that are at the intersections of those issues. And the first one is really with ethnic studies. Last session, to give some context, we fought against a bill that would have just given Zionists ultimately money from the state to define what genocide education meant and means for our state. And so we asked, hey, this should include multiple perspectives. The state said, you sound like Hamas. And so that's kind of how the state legislature plays out, to be honest. It's a pretty rough front to fight these kind of things. But we actually killed that bill. And that wasn't our intention. Our intention was to actually force them to have a conversation and disrupt the work that's going on there to produce that kind of propaganda. So luckily, we're working on new legislation this year to reinvest in ethnic studies. We got the state to give money to work on anti-Islamophobia training in our schools. And so that's the first time the state's ever done that. And then we're working more proactively this session on ethnic studies priorities. And so that's really exciting. We have promises and bill sponsors. So exciting work for ethnic studies. That is also connecting super closely to what's going on in the city. I work as kind of a community organizer with the Seattle Student Union and the connections with the Educators Union to ensure that we're addressing student mental health, addressing the violence plan and the school safety plan that the mayor is pushing forward, which is ultimately a slippery slope to pushing cops back in our schools. So in the coming weeks and actually coming days, and I'll put a link in the chat, but we're pushing a youth-led movement to force the city to be accountable to city student leadership, which is a part of ASB bodies and the school board and all this other stuff. So really excited to work on that campaign, because at the end of the day, we can't just be fighting for racial and economic justice unless we're fighting with the youth on the issues that they're most impacted by. So that's exciting work to keep cops out of school. And that's in coalition with a former Black Panther, Michael Dixon, who just released, we worked on the article that came out in the South Seattle Emerald yesterday, an intergenerational conversation. The last one, and then I'll shut up, is the Big Five. And the Big Five is really we can't do this unless we change the material conditions of our schools. Washington State has the 49th most regressive or second most regressive tax code in the entire country. I like to say we're second to Florida because that is the case. And so we're looking to change that. We can't depend on regressive property taxes and sales tax to fund our schools. We need to be taxing the rich to fully fund our schools. So the Big Five kind of pushes forth 5 legislative priorities to change and address taxing the rich and fully funding our schools. So I'll drop a bit.ly link with the pledge. We're asking local leaders and leaders across the state to sign on to that pledge to address the deficits that we're facing really statewide. And yeah, please reach out to me if you have any questions or interests. I am just about to go to an event downtown and driving in my car, clearly. But thanks y'all for having this discussion, and look forward to chatting with y'all soon.
Thanks, Oliver. Really helpful way to understand how education is connected to everything from mental health to tax policy. And really good to hear that y'all are, as teachers, linking up with the students, right? Because that fight for education should be together. So now we're gonna pass it over to some students. Maybe we can hear from Jules first, representing Anik Bayan at the University of Washington.
Hey folks, I'm Jules. As stated before, I'm part of ABU Dub. Anik Bayan is a youth organization fighting for national democracy and national liberation in the Philippines. Currently, we're running our Take Back Our Education campaign, which is grounded in dismantling U.S. imperialism's grasp on education. Let me see if you can, okay, you can hear me, cool. The University of Washington and like really many other neoliberal institutions levy their students and resources as compensations for millions of dollars they receive from corporations like Boeing. These corporations use these resources to violently plunder and oppress much of the global South. Not only that, but particularly, the University of Washington has programs such as the Jackson School for International Studies, which host active partnerships with the State Department to develop U.S. NATO counterinsurgency. They also host relationships with the U.S. Army through the War College and Joint Base Lewis McChord, which is down in Tacoma. All of this contributes to a fascist state repression in the Philippines in the name of counterterrorism and drags the Philippines into an inter-imperialist war between the U.S. and China. Education as a resource for exploitation and violence towards the global South must end. This People's Platform really helps illustrate our struggle to make education pro-people and to expose the warmongering and corporate interests of neoliberal education. Thank you.
Thanks, Jules. Yeah, great reminder. Universities should not be pipelines for the U.S. military and its projects, but unfortunately here in the U.S. they are. So thank you for your struggle and your fight to build a more genuine education that serves people's needs. I'm going to pass it now to Rain and Zoe to speak on behalf of the Direct Action Coalition at Seattle University.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Rain.
I'm Zoe.
And we are the co-presidents for a Seattle University club called the Direct Action Coalition. I think obviously everyone here has spoken a little bit about the importance of education, specifically thinking about how certain revolutionary authors and thinkers kind of get gatekept, especially from poor communities that essentially have schooling systems that just don't let them learn about these alternative ideas. And of course, everyone knows about the Republican platform to start banning books in certain states that would further like exacerbate this issue. But as a few people have alluded to that have spoken previously, even getting access to the actual college education doesn't necessarily guarantee that it just ends repression. It just kind of begins to come from the other side, because now you have access to learning about these kind of revolutionary texts and these ideas, and you're meeting other radicals that feel the same way you do. But as we saw with a lot of Palestinian protests, Democrats are also invested in student repression too. And really, no matter how liberal or progressive your professors are, it doesn't necessarily stop administration from being, it's still imperialist supporters. Even here at Seattle University, we are definitely invested in Boeing, and we have a lot of our engineering students actually get essentially recruited by Boeing to go and work for them. And our own president here has said that divesting from Boeing is a non-starter for him. And then they also have people who are serving on our boards too. So it kind of ends up creating this environment where you have access to a lot of leftist spaces, but you're still constantly fighting repression from your administrators. And what DAC tries to do is essentially have students be able to have that type of leftist environment where you're also like educating about broad issues that are impacting you, but also informing students on how it's not just about like getting to college and then getting like your degree or whatever, but making sure that the college spaces that you're entering to are also devoid of any type of imperialist power or benefits that will also like being used to really just exploit your money and your own your education to serve something that you want to learn to not to destroy and abolish. I don't know if you have anything.
I think that's
Yeah.
so we'll hand it off. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to you both. Really important and powerful to hear how y'all are actually trying to, build pro-people education. It's crazy that the university admin basically says that pro-people education is a non-starter. That's basically what they mean when they say that cutting ties with Boeing is not an option. So continue to keep us in the loop as well on how we can support your struggle. And we know that, with the crackdown on students, it's up to us to defend our movements, right? So we are right there alongside you as you, face up the university administration. With that, we're going to move into the next point on migration. It states, resist the attacks on migrants and defend the right to migrate while fighting against the root causes of forced migration. Demilitarize the borders, decriminalize migration, end migrant detention, ensure amnesty for all, and guarantee access to livelihood and all basic needs and services for migrants. For this one, I'm going to call on Jess to speak on behalf of the International Migrants Alliance.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. And thank you, everyone. It's been really powerful to hear all of the local campaigns that are being waged, and really the ways that all of our struggles are connected. So yeah, as the International Migrants Alliance, which is a grassroots alliance of migrant-led organizations from around the world, we are waging what we call our grassroots migrants agenda. I'm actually wondering if I could share my screen. Is that possible? If not, totally fine. But the grassroots migrants agenda, very similar to this People's Platform point on migration, is really focused on 4 main points in which we are uplifting the campaigns of migrant organizations from around the country to really oppose the current system. As we saw in the beginning when Nikhil was sharing, there was so many different points. Migration and the border in particular are always elections issues. And what we're seeing on both sides of the coin is the Republicans, as we saw, outright fascist attacks against migrants. The Democrats are actually moving towards more fascism. We're diving deeper into Harris's platform. She's saying that she will send more border enforcement to the border, to detain more individuals, to deport and stop asylum. And we can directly connect that to the campaigns that are happening here locally. We know that there's thousands of asylum seekers who have been arriving here to Washington State. Those asylum seekers are being forced into living under horrific living conditions, having to sleep outside in tents, not being provided basic access to food, water, housing, jobs. And this is all due to the bombing that's happening, or the US intervention that's happening in their homelands, really forcing migration from their homelands here to the US, where then they're treated within those horrific conditions. And so as the International Migrants Alliance, we're waging what we call the Grassroots Migrants Agenda. And so the 4 points of the Grassroots Migrants Agenda, actually very aligned with the ALPS People's Platform, is to end forced migration and imperialist war. So we're supporting grassroots organizations that are calling for the US out of their homelands, that we don't want US military bombing or continuing the war in Gaza. We don't want the US military in Korea and the Philippines or anywhere in the world in Latin America, because we know that this intervention is really causing the forced migrations, millions of migrants worldwide. Second point is we're fighting for the rights, livelihood, to livelihood, health, and housing for all migrants. We're seeing, we can very much so relate that to what's happening here in Seattle, in Washington State, where the thousands of asylum seekers are having to fight for basic things like a roof over their heads. So although the US continues to bomb or intervene in their homelands, when migrants come here looking for reprieve, what they're met with is just continued repression. Our third point is to end the repression of migrants and stop the fascist state attack of migrants at our militarized borders, in ICE raids, in detention as a whole, and deportation. In this particular case, when we think about the repression of migrants, we have the Justice for the United States campaign, who were really trafficked migrants who were left on a boat in the seas of Westport, Washington, for over 4 months by their employer. And these Filipino fishermen were stuck on this boat, not being paid their basic wages by their employer, and really just left there to wait instead of being able to go home as they requested in their contracts. And now the United Six continue to fight for their back wages, but then also for justice for this basic human trafficking case that happened on the shores of Washington. In fact, yesterday, I saw an article, I don't have all of the details, but there was another ship of 3 Ecuadorian migrants who were left on a boat found in the Puget Sound, who had been left there for 3 months by their employer. And the way that they were welcomed into the Puget Sound was Customs Border Patrol came onto their boat and removed them physically. So EMA is actually doing some research on like what's happened to these migrants. And so these stories continue to show the repression of migrants, not just by the state and by the federal government, but also by employers taking advantage of migrant workers who've been forced to have to leave their homelands. And the fourth point in the Grassroots Migrants Agenda is legalization for all. And so we call for legalization for all because we know that migrants deserve an accessible, humane, and simple pathway to regularize their status, really free from exploitation, discrimination, or exclusion. And within this point, we can see our local campaign with La Resistencia, who continues to fight against the repression and inhumane treatment of migrants who are currently being detained at the Northwest Detention Center. I believe UW just came out with a study sharing that the Northwest Detention Center is the largest and most grueling detention center in all of the US. So within this, EMA really sees how it's important that we work locally with grassroots migrants organizations who are fighting against the very repression and exploitation and oppression of migrants worldwide, to fight against the root causes, to fight for rights, livelihood, health, and housing, but really work to end the root causes of forced migration, which requires addressing the imperialist system as a whole. With that, I'll pass it back to Daniel.
Thanks, Jess. A really strong contrast, especially with the platforms of the Democrats and Republicans that call for an end to the migrant invasion, that completely erases the dignity and humanity of migrants and their just struggle for basic needs, services, livelihood. So really appreciate you sharing it with the Grassroots Migrant Agenda. Hope we can keep working together and uplifting that and seeing how it's connected with the People's Platform. So heartbreaking to hear the continued cases of abuse and neglect, but so inspiring to see how migrants around the world are coming together and linking their struggles to understand that they are all interconnected. So for the next part, we're going to move to point 8 on environment. This point states, end the pollution, violent resource extraction and plunder by transnational corporations and the US military, build resilient, green, democratically managed and community-driven infrastructure. And for the point on environment, I would love to call on Kenneth on behalf of ICA.
Hello, my name is Kenneth. I'm a member of Institutional Climate Action, which is a climate justice group at the University of Washington. We're right now working on our Fossil Free U campaign, which organizes in institutions of higher education to cut all ties with the fossil fuel industry and its enablers, from divestment, which we achieved at UW in 2022, to like campus decarbonization, to research labs and funding, and also career centers as well. Right now we're working a lot, or we're focusing a lot on campus decarbonization. Our goal is like 95% by 2035. And then we're also we've been working with a lot of climate justice groups in Washington as well, like for fighting the initiative 2117 that's coming up, or generally like all the bad initiatives in November, but specifically that one, which would repeal the Climate Commitment Act. And then a lot of us are also working on the divestment campaign, a different divestment campaign at UW from the Zionist entity. And so we fight the fossil fuel industry's role not only, or we fight the fossil fuel industry not only because of their role in the climate crisis, but also to end the complicity in our institutions in this industry's like pattern of willful blindness in the targeting of marginalized communities for resource extraction, for land grabs, for like to sacrifice for toxic and unsafe infrastructure. And generally a pattern that offsets the burdens of its own profits onto these communities. And so, and we also look at other institutions and enablers as well that benefit from this pattern, like the US military and like banks as well. And so we understand these ecological crises in its systemic context, and we work in solidarity to oppose the overarching drivers like colonization and imperialism. But I guess generally as students, as workers, and like faculty members as well, we don't want our work and our research to be co-opted by the fossil fuel industry, to be like hurting communities and destroying land and perpetuating these crises that we will have to live with right now, but also in the future. And so we want ourselves and our institutions to be able to pursue a livable, just, and equitable future for our communities and our planet. Yeah.
Thanks, Kenneth. Really great to hear how y'all are helping advance the climate justice movement with students, workers, faculty, everyone that has a stake in a cleaner future and understands the connections between the US military, right? The fossil fuel industry, the big banks, all of these are really important connections to be driving out and allow us to understand how we can target our campaigns. So really appreciate you sharing and excited to keep working with y'all. So on moving on to the next portion, this is on national liberation and people sovereignty. The point states, end US domination over the economic, political, cultural, and military systems of oppressed peoples and nations and indigenous peoples in the form of occupation, sanctions, intervention, repression, and plunder of the land, promoting instead international solidarity and cooperation for mutual benefit. For this one, I would love to first call on Richard to speak on behalf of Bayan.
Everyone, my camera is off because of my connection, but hi, I'm with Bayan Seattle, specifically organizing with Anik Bayan Seattle. Bayan is a grassroots alliance of Filipino organizations made up of sectors across all of Philippine society. So that includes Anik Bayan with the youth, Gabriela, the women's sector, Migrante, migrants, even just those are the ones locally, and then there are many other sectors in the Philippines, workers, jeepney drivers, indigenous peoples, you name it. And we're really fighting for national sovereignty and a free and democratic Philippines. Our campaign, I'll share more about, is the US Out of the Philippines campaign. And a lot of folks have drawn connections already, but the US is really building up its foothold in the Philippines in order to confront China. And that really looks like increased violence and exploitation of the Filipino people. There are currently 9 military bases in the Philippines and plans to expand. There's through the PARA Act, which will put $2.5 billion of US military aid funding to the Philippines. That money is used by the Philippine government to harass, arrest, kill Filipino organizers, those taking up resistance against the Philippine government. it's used to actually buy Israeli arms. The Philippines is the #3 weapons buyer of Israeli arms. And just some examples more explicitly about the conditions in the Philippines that the US is really helping to reinforce in collusion with the government. I just came back from an exposure trip with Anik Bayan USA, and the communities there don't have the money or the conditions to have proper health care. And that's because the budget in the Philippines is being used towards militarization, is being used by landlords who profit. One of the community members knows acupuncture, not because he just wanted to learn it, but because there aren't sufficient hospitals or a healthcare system for the community, and he has to be the doctor of the community. A specific community has 20 beds for the 8,000 residents. And then another example is it's actually coming up in October, the 10-year anniversary of the murder of Jennifer Laude. For those that aren't familiar, Jennifer Laude was a trans woman killed by US Marine Joseph Scott Pemberton. And he was actually found guilty by the Philippine court, but because of the US's stranglehold on the Philippines, both economically, politically, militarily, he was allowed to leave the Philippines after a mountain of time and not serve justice in the Philippines. So I think I'm coming up on time, but some things that we're building up towards right now is the anniversary of martial law in the 70s. There were a lot of killings of activists and the Filipino people by the Marcos Sr. dictator. His son is now the president and continuing some of the same policies against the people, keeping the conditions the same. And we also see that this is connected to the ongoing impact of US militarism today. So on the 20th, we are holding a rally commemorating the resistance in martial law, the lives lost, delivering a letter to Senator Patty Murray demanding that she support the Philippine Human Rights Act to stop military aid, US military aid to the Philippine government until human rights violations are accounted for, and to not support the PARA Act, which would put $2.5 billion of US military aid into the Philippine military hands. And then we'll also hold a broad vigil wanting to honor the lives lost by US militarism, or caused by US militarism, not only in the Philippines, but around the world, as we're talking about today. And then last one is on September 15th. So that's before the action and vigil. There will be a report back about that trip that I mentioned that I just got back from. It'll be several of us that will be sharing stories and what the conditions in the Philippines look like under neoliberalism. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Really appreciate your sharing. I think, yeah, just hearing about the billions of dollars of military aid being poured into the Philippines by the US to further commit human rights violations, that alone should be a major deal breaker in these upcoming elections. And there are still so many more reasons to oppose both of these imperialist candidates. But yeah, your struggle in the face of the harshest oppression is really inspiring, and I think we all have a lot to learn from the Filipino people's resistance. So thank you for sharing. With that, I'm gonna pass it to Bisan to share on behalf of Samidun Seattle.
Thank you, Daniel. Hi, everyone. My name is Bisan. and I am a member of Samidun Seattle, the Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network. So yes, we as an organization are fighting for Palestinian national liberation. We are fighting for the freedom of all our prisoners, and we are fighting for the freedom of Palestine from the river to the sea. National liberation is definitely a cause that has been adopted by many around the world now. Particularly, all of us do need liberation from imperialism, specifically U.S. imperialism, and how it's laid its body all across the world in order to exploit and extract resources from the masses. So we are fighting for this liberation, and we are mobilizing against this genocide by uplifting the resistance and uplifting our prisoners, and we fundamentally see the Palestinian cause as one that is anti-colonial, anti-racist, and anti-imperial. And we have a lot of campaigns that are related to the struggle of our prisoners and the prisoners movement that is actively taking place behind bars right now in Palestine, and making sure that we are building bridges and links to make sure that those prison walls are not barriers to our work, our triumphs, our accomplishments, and the calls and demands of our prisoners. So one of our most recent campaigns has actually been returning the bodies of the martyred and assassinated Palestinian prisoners behind in Zionist prisons right now. So, one of the impacts of this is the Zionist entity tries its best to kind of break the will of the Palestinian people and break the spirit of resistance, the spirit of the people, the spirit of steadfastness. This is an impossible task, obviously, but by taking and keeping the bodies of the martyrs and preventing the families from being able to actually mourn and feel a dignity, at least in like allowing this death to feel real for them. It's really hard also when you know that your loved one is no longer on this earth, but you have never even seen their body, to kind of be able for your brain to be able to confirm that they are gone. So this is really something that is so, like, this ability to grieve is so important for the Palestinian people, and this is what they know and have been trying to take away by keeping even just dead bodies, even our dead bodies are threats to them. So this is where we're at. Comrade Richard also was mentioning the protracted struggle in the Philippines that's taking place right now, and I just wanted to mention that in national liberation, the Philippines and Palestine are both countries that are kind of on the vanguard, on the forefront of anti-colonial armed struggle. And sorry, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention this, that kind of on the fault lines of where imperialism is resting its body most violently, most extractively, you have these countries that are resisting this kind of oppression. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say, and free Palestine.
Free Palestine. Thank you, Bisan. Really powerful words. That even the dead bodies are threats, because we know that every Palestinian is a force in this world. So thank you for uplifting the struggle of the Palestinian people, making the connections internationally, how it is interlinked with national liberation struggles around the world. And yes, glory to the martyrs, and long live the Palestinian resistance. So thank you both for the powerful sharings on national liberation. We're going to move to the final point now on the People's Platform on peace and justice. Peace and justice, it states, end the genocidal US imperialist war machine, redistributing the bloated US military budget towards people's needs. Uplift people's struggles for their rights, livelihood, and self-determination to promote peace built upon a foundation of justice. And for this one, I would love to pass it to Shane first to share on behalf of No Tech for Apartheid.
Hi there, thank you. My name is Shane. I'm an organizer for No Tech for Apartheid. No Tech for Apartheid is a worker-led campaign that was launched in 2021. Our goal is to oppose Project Nimbus, which is Google and Amazon's $1.2 billion contract with the Israeli military and government. Israel has a long track record of using tech to oppress and kill Palestinians. This includes mass surveillance, mass targeting, and increasingly automated killing machines, and big tech has a long track record of being complicit in US military activity in general. Project Nimbus provides new data centers all within Israel's borders and under the complete control of the government, with no transparency or accountability for what they're being used for. And it also includes state-of-the-art AI services, including things like facial recognition, object tracking, sentiment analysis, robotics, satellite, and more, despite Israel's proven track record of using these technologies for human rights violations. In February, at a conference dedicated to Nimbus, the head of Israel's National Cyber Directorate, Gabby Portnoy, said, "Phenomenal things are happening in battle because of the Nimbus public cloud, confirming the use of Nimbus in the ongoing genocide of Palestinians." And a recent investigation from 972 magazine also confirmed the intelligence data collected from mass surveillance in Gaza is being stored in the Nimbus cloud, which directly contradicts statements by Google executives who have repeatedly denied and downplayed the military use of Nimbus. Our sister campaign, No Azure for Apartheid, seeks to expose similar complicity from Microsoft, which has been Israel's cloud platform of choice prior to Nimbus. Over the years, we've organized workers, done political education, organized protests and teach-ins to raise awareness and get workers organized against this. Including in April, we did 2 large sit-ins at 2 different Google offices. 9 Google workers ended up being arrested for those sit-ins, but Google retaliated by firing a total of 50 workers, showing that they are willing to just cut off massive numbers of people rather than let go of this contract. And we filed a complaint with the NLRB to challenge that retaliation and are still seeing that through. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Really important work that y'all are doing, especially here in Seattle, where the Amazon, Microsoft have such strongholds. So really appreciate the struggle, the folks working in the tech industry to help resist the use of tech for genocide, for apartheid, and really set the narrative around Google, Microsoft, and all of big tech, that they don't have ours or anybody's interests in mind other than those of the big wigs up top. So thank you for sharing about your struggle, and really excited to keep working with you all. For another sharing on peace and justice, I'm going to pass it to Imran to share on behalf of Resist US-Led War.
Thank you, Daniel. My name is Imran, and I'm a member of Resist US-Led War Seattle. Resist Seattle is an ILPS member org and a member of the Resist US-Led War Global Network, which is an alliance of anti-war and pro-just peace organizations. And we also serve as a resource for anti-imperialist and anti-war education and movement building. We take up actions and campaigns to oppose US-led wars of aggression and to uplift the just national liberation struggles abroad, from Palestine to the Philippines and beyond. Here in Seattle, what that looks like is our primary campaign at the University of Washington to cut ties with Boeing, which is the 3rd largest weapons manufacturer in the world, in order to end the pipelining of students and research into the war machine and reclaim our labor and institutions to serve the needs of the people instead. We also convene actions targeting local sites of militarism, including Joint Base Lewis McChord and the Indian Island Naval Battery, which actively send equipment and weapons that enable the genocide in Palestine and the repression of activists in the Philippines. And this summer, we mobilized with Seattle's broad anti-war movement in the Reimagine Seafair Coalition, working to shift Seafair away from being an environmentally destructive, Boeing-sponsored recruitment tool for the US military that targets Seattle's most vulnerable communities, and towards a genuine celebration of Seattle's people and culture. So in closing, waging these campaigns for a just peace means that we have to expose and isolate all manifestations of US militarism from our cities, our universities, and communities, and act in solidarity with our comrades abroad struggling against the same target of US imperialism. So many thanks to ILPS for assembling this platform and bringing us together to build towards it. Thank you.
Thanks, Imran. It's been great working with you over the summer and the past couple of years. And yeah, always just inspired by the work of Resist that is so necessary here in the belly of the beast to be opposing the US war machine and the military industrial complex. So appreciate your sharing. So yeah, that's it. That is the People's Platform. I am feeling fired up. I don't know who else is. I think it's clear Kamala Harris, Donald Trump are not going to do shit about any of these issues, right? The people will. We are going to be the ones to advance our demands and our issues. And really inspired and humbled to be sharing space with all of the incredible organizers and community members here today, showing us what solidarity looks like, what our power looks like when we are linked together. So appreciate you sharing about your work. We're going to continue to stick together to fight alongside one another, arm in arm, carry it up to the elections and beyond, because ultimately building a mass movement is a big project, but this is one part of it here today. So thank you again for sharing, and I'm going to pass it to Liz to talk a little bit about how we're going to take these issues, these different campaigns, these struggles, link them together, and what our plan is to organize through the People's Platform over the next several.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, thanks to everyone who stuck on, and yeah, for sharing your campaigns, what's happening locally, all of the fights and struggles that people are taking up, because, right, we can't do this without one another, and together we can build an even broader movement to take down imperialism. But yeah, I think the question right now, right, as we've gone through all of the platform points, we've gone through folks' campaigns, what's happening here in Seattle, really want to move forward and talk about how we're going to work together, and what's coming up, especially with the elections being so soon. So if we could go to the next slide. Yeah, just want to talk a bit about phasing and timeline. These are like just a slice of all of the different events and different struggles and fights that people are taking up in the next couple months. But yeah, we're currently now, early September, we launched this campaign. We see a lot of things upcoming. We have the presidential debates happening next week. And we have, different actions that folks have talked about in their campaigns throughout September and October. And, we're about like 2 months away from Election Day. And yeah, really wanting to build up with educationals, with actions, with petitions, what have you, all of the different things that, folks in your campaigns and your organizations are taking up to build up to Election Day, so that after Election Day, we can really strongly have a united front and really fight and expose the elections for what they are. They're imperialist elections. They're not truly solving the issues of the people, and they're not providing solutions either. And so, yeah, really wanting to build up. We're also proposing that towards the end of October or early November, really wanting to bring everyone back together for a solidarity school or a people's forum, really something similar to this, right, where folks can talk about what they've been fighting for and what their campaigns are really strongly fighting for, so that we can, go into the election period united, to take down and to expose the elections for what they are. And then as we move into, after the elections, really thinking about how we can continue to work together, right? Inauguration days in January. And so really wanting to build together and build a really strong movement to call out the imperialists at the top. But yeah, I guess to continue forward, really wanting to move into the committee structure and get into really like the how we're going to work together, right? There's been so many great campaigns and everyone's in different organizations and organizing different types of people and taking up different fights and struggles, whether it be here really locally in Seattle or, abroad back home. And so, yeah, wanting to talk about how we can work together and really come together and bring all of our struggles together so that we can move in step as well. And so currently we have, I think some folks have already seen this at the first planning meeting, but we're wanting to have a steering committee and then have 4 different committees. So community outreach and engagement to really bring in more people, talk about and then also do more propaganda and education. We want a committee that's focused on news media to really garner some of the traditional media outlets as well, and also put out op-eds and things like that so that we can bring in more people broadly. And then also have a committee to talk about mobilization. I guess to move into the community outreach and engagement. Oh, I guess the first one to talk more firmly about the steering committee, really wanting the steering committee to be, you know, the committee that really just bottom lines everything, makes sure that like the campaign is moving forward. We have so many great campaigns like on the ground and all of these different organizations working for different things. So let's make sure that we're talking together, you know, sharing spaces together, really making sure that we're able to combine our forces together to expose the elections and really make our campaigns and our demands and our calls at the forefront. And so, yeah, wanting a steering committee to really drive the campaign. And then we'll also have a community outreach and engagement committee to, yeah, more broadly reach out to the community, make sure that like different folks and different orgs are being pulled in and also can use this platform to really talk about their issues, talk about their campaigns, talk about the fights that you guys are waging and the demands and calls that we're wanting as well. And also making sure that we're able to convene community meetings and talk to one another as well. Yeah, I think to move forward, yeah, also wanting to do the propaganda and education, right? There's so much that we can be sharing with one another even more, you know, solidly and really sharing and exposing these different calls and demands, making flyers, making graphics, and making sure that we're also educating people who aren't in our orgs or aren't organized or, you know, aren't even politicized. How are we bringing these people into our orgs and being able to highlight the election cycle as like, you know, this imperialist way that the ruling class implements like quote unquote democracy, right? And so, yeah, I think also wanting to use the news media as a way to talk about and spread broadly like press outreach, media outreach, making sure that we have op-eds going out and things like that. And then lastly, yeah, wanting to have a mobilization committee so that we can plan an action after, you know, the elections are announced, really, you know, making sure that we're also giving the community a space on the streets to voice their demands and their calls and really, you know, act on what we're calling for. So this is the general committee structure. We were initially going to have like committee breakouts at the end of this, but due to time, I think we're going to cut it. So I think the call to action right now is to join a committee. You know, if you're interested in endorsing this campaign, we're wanting to, we'll have a endorsement form come out very soon. We'll send it out with all of the follow-ups that we'll do after this. But yeah, please join a committee. I think someone posted the committee links in the chat, but please, we really want to continue working with each other, sharing with each other, moving in step with each other, and see what we can do together, whether it be educationals, prop, you know, like graphics, social media posts, actions, things like that. How can we really work with one another, seeing that like all of our struggles are really connected and intertwined, and, you know, at the root of the issue is imperialism. How can we, yeah, work together? So yeah, please join a committee. But I think other than that, yeah, just wanting to close out today strongly. You know, it's kind of hard to follow all of these campaign sharings because it was so agitating and so, empowering and energizing. But please, stay tuned for the endorsement link, join a committee. We really want to work together so that we can be united, because, the imperialists and those capitalists at the top are also united. So how can we also strongly unite our communities and organizations to move forward together and in step? But I guess to also wanting to call out some upcoming events. I know a lot of things have been happening. And yeah, so yeah, wanting to call out today that there will be a march at Westlake Park. I think a lot of folks have already dropped off to go to that. But yeah, I wonder if I can call on someone from Super UW to talk a bit about the rally and march at Westlake.
Yeah. We're not planning aspects, but really excited for joining Washington Muslim Youth for Palestine today. And there's also going to be a vigil and moment of silence in remembrance of our comrade and friend and fellow student Aisha Noor at the rally today.
Thanks, Jasper. Yeah, we also have a screening happening later tonight that I think also includes a vigil for Aisha Noor. I don't know if Nick is still on the call to talk about that screening. If not, that's all right. But yeah, also wanting to note there is another honoring of life happening on Sunday at City Hall. If you go to the next slide, thank you. Yeah, and so yeah, lots of different events, upcoming events. We're also hosting a watch party of the presidential debate to watch and also discuss and be critical of these debates, and also understand, right, what the imperialists and capitalists are coming out with in their analysis and narrative. So yeah, join us next Tuesday for that. But yeah, thanks so much for sticking around and being here and sharing your campaigns and fights and struggles. But yeah, hope to see you soon and see you in committees so that we can keep organizing and agitating and mobilizing together as a unified front. But thank you so much. I think we're almost at time. Any other questions or thoughts to share? Not, have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Solidarity.